Well, I'm delighted to have the chance of addressing students in Warwick. I came to Warwick last year to deliver a lecture and much enjoyed it. So, and met quite a lot of them in person then, so it's nice to meet them again via the camera.
And so, what's your point of view as governor in Hong Kong during the transition period for one country, two systems?
I think the concept of one country, two systems was brilliant, but there were a lot of people who were sceptical about whether it was possible for Hong Kong to return to Chinese sovereignty while retaining its special qualities, the rule of law and the freedoms that one associates with it, and of course its way of managing things economically. Milton Friedman, for example, the great American economist, simply didn't think it was possible to have a system in which one part of the country went one way and another part of the country did things totally differently. In practice, I think it's worked very well. Hong Kong has remained under the rule of law. It has all the freedoms that you associate with a plural liberal society. It has a good police, it has a clean civil service, it has all the attributes of a plural society except the right to elect its own government, and it will have that one day. I'm unhappy that democratic development in Hong Kong has been slowed down, has been choked off, but I'm delighted that there is in Hong Kong such a strong sense of commitment to democratic development and such a strong sense of citizenship. So I think Hong Kong has remained what it was. It's remained one of the freest societies in Asia, and I commend the Chinese government for, by and large, with the exception of democratic development, keeping their side of the bargain that was reached in the joint declaration in 1984. There have been one or two issues on which I was unhappy about the way China intervened on legal issues, but by and large I think things have gone very well. Much helped, of course, by the fact that the Chief Justice in Hong Kong, Andrew Lee, has given wonderfully strong leadership in maintaining Hong Kong's independent judiciary, and I think the legal profession as a whole, as well as the civil service, have done very well. So, one country, two systems, yes, it's worked for the first 12 years, 13 years in which it's been tested, so it's got another 37 to go, and who knows what the one country will be like by then.
And do you think that Hong Kong's high autonomy, high self-autonomy has been influenced by what the Chinese government has got the power on explaining the basic law?
I think that Hong Kong's autonomy has been constrained by Beijing's insistence that it's for Beijing to interpret the basic law, and I think in particular that's been true of the slowing down in the process of democratization, and I think that's meant that Hong Kong has perhaps in some ways had an even less smooth time than has been the case. I mean, I've always argued that democracy in Hong Kong, proper democracy, would not be disruptive. I've always argued that people in Hong Kong are very moderate and mature and should be trusted to run their own affairs. Well, that's only happened in a limited way, and I regret that, but it doesn't take away from the fact that overall I think Hong Kong has been very successful.
In terms of British influence, was there a concerted effort to entrench as much democratic principle as possible before '97 in the hope that it would maintain afterwards?
Somebody once described what we tried to do in the 1990s as being like tutorial government, which is, it was a Chinese lawyer who described it like that, which is a slightly patronizing way to talk about it. But we did want to encourage a greater understanding of what made Hong Kong special. I think we helped to develop the already growing sense of citizenship in Hong Kong. I think that was one of the reasons why when people thought that their civil liberties were going to be threatened by legislation on subversion, so many hundreds of thousands marched on the streets to protect what they believed was very important to their way of life and to their quality of life. I think we did help to give deeper roots to the democratic process and to the rule of law. I always thought that it was important before we left to put some panes of glass in the window so that if anybody was to break them to try to get at the essence of Hong Kong, it would be noticed by the world outside. I've never understood why some people should think that if we'd settled for much less than had been promised to people in the joint declaration, it would have somehow given them greater democracy than they got. I think that's an absurd, preposterous proposition.